Welcome to Post-Exertional Mayonnaise. As you can see, it's just, or you can't see if you're listening on the podcast, but it's just me this week, and we've got a fantastic interview coming up with Anna Wood, who has been taking photographs in her garden over the period of a year of birds, and she's got some fantastic images, and we're going to talk about her story a little bit as well. So thank you for joining us. Just a quick introduction, because if you're new to the podcast, we're a podcast about living with ME and chronic illness, and we're focusing on creativity and making meaning. So those are kind of our main focuses, but we're thinking we'll end up here, there, and everywhere as we journey along this sort of strange podcasting journey together. So we just want to say thank you for people that have responded to Dov's shout out for weird symptoms. We've had a few responses. Dov talked about struggling with visual memory, and that's something we'll come back to on our next episode, all being well, next week. So thanks for getting back to us on those. So look forward to that. And I just want to say thank you to Claire, Christina, Josephine, and Steve for their messages and getting in touch. And we'll come to you as well as time goes on. And yes, a public service announcement. There is an ME CFS Arts and Crafts auction taking place at the end of June. It's a Facebook auction, can happen from anywhere in the world, so people can submit items for auction, and people can buy items. It just might have to pay a little bit more for postage depending on where you are in the world, but that's open to everybody. And the money from those sales go to the Open Medicine Foundation and Solve ME CFS initiative. So I'll put a note in the show notes, and you can have a look on the Facebook group, join, and if you've got things that you want to do, this arts and crafts that you would like to share, sell, that would be brilliant. So without further ado, let's get to our interview with Anna. Okey-doke. So welcome, Anna, to Post-Exertional Mayonnaise. It's really exciting that you're our first guest, and I'm really pleased to have you. So it's brilliant. And so we'll start off. Would you like to just tell us a bit about yourself as a person, your sort of like history with ME, and sort of like where you are, where you live, kind of what you get up to?
Oh gosh, that's a lot of questions. I won't remember.
That's a lot of questions. Just tell us a bit about yourself. Sorry.
Hello, thank you so much for having me. So I'm Anna. I've got fairly severe ME, so I'm mostly housebound, and my husband also has sort of a similar level of ME to me. So we're both in Glasgow, quite isolated really, because we don't have family or nearby, or really know that many people. We've both been ill a long time now, so it's really difficult. So I always start this story as, well, I got ill when I was 24, and I was doing my PhD at Durham University, and I had flu probably about 9 months before, and that's always sort of been attributed to it. But more recently, I've realised I didn't really have a normal teenage years either. I didn't know at the time. I didn't feel like I was ill. I didn't go to a doctor. It didn't occur to me. But when I've looked at people, often post these like before and after pictures, and before I had ME, I was climbing mountains, and I was going off camping and all sorts of things. And I was realizing that actually I couldn't have done that. I just didn't have the same level of energy as anyone else. It wasn't that I was tired all the time. I just ran out of energy quicker, I think. So I think something was probably going wrong all through my teenage years. But I didn't properly get ill, I guess, till I was 24, and I just kept having these really weird crashes, where I suddenly just had no energy at all, and then I would pick up again. The next day I was walking, 5 miles or something, and it was fine, and until a point when it wasn't fine, and I just didn't get better. Except I did get better. So I have a really weird story, because most people seem to have got really ill and then been really ill for a bit, and then hopefully improved a little bit out of that. And I did that in about 8 weeks. I had really bad really unwell. Managed to get to my parents' house. They looked after me, and I had that's between 6 and 8 weeks, I think it was. I was almost back to normal. The only thing I couldn't do was exercise, of course.
Mm.
And as soon as I tried to do anything like that raised my heart rate, I was really just felt lightheaded and dizzy and weird. But I didn't really have any other symptoms. And so when I went, so at that point, this was 1999, and there wasn't a
Wow.
lot of stuff online, but there was some stuff online. And I think the ME Association did have a webpage, and I had a look, and I think I just didn't fulfill the criteria. So I just thought, oh, well, it can't be that. So I just need to exercise myself back to fitness. That's clearly what I need to do. And no one told me anything else, and I had no advice. And so that's what I tried to do. And of course, that was a bit of a disaster, shall we say. But even so, I was very lucky, and I had about 5 years of being mildly affected. I was working almost full time. I was just having some level of social life, and I could walk sort of a mile a day. And at that level, that was really good. It was good. Like, it was better for me to do that level of exercise. I think when people are mildly affected, often find that complete rest isn't helpful. You need to do a certain level. And that was fine until about, I think, 2008. And I was starting a new job up in Glasgow. And I got flu, and again I pushed myself. I just kicking myself that for some reason I thought, oh, it can't happen to me, that I wouldn't get severely affected. Why I thought this, I have no idea, because my now husband, but then really good best friend, was severely affected from the beginning. So I knew him when we were both well. He was there when I first got ill. So I knew he was really understanding. And then 3 years after I got ill, he got ill, but he had a different pattern to me, and he didn't get almost better as I did. So for some reason I thought, oh, it won't happen to me, it'll be fine. And then of course, I kept pushing, 18 months of pushing, and suddenly that was it. And that was 15 years ago. It's time just passes, and nothing has really changed since then. I haven't managed to recreate that improvement that I always seem to have had in the early years. So that's where I am now.
And do you feel like you've had kind of like ebbs and flows with your illness, or is it kind of been a pretty just steady low baseline for you?
I think pretty constant, to be honest. I do have quite big crashes that sometimes come out of the blue. I sometimes have slightly better periods where I can perhaps leave the house once a week for like 30 minutes without completely crashing. But no, and nothing I've tried has helped. I have tried quite a few things, and nothing has ever seemed to make any difference at all. But I manage to work. So I work 5 hours a week for the University of Edinburgh. So one of the things I did once I was sort of recovered from the shock, I guess, of being housebound and of having to leave my career and all of that stuff. And I was just well enough to do an MSc online. It was very part-time, and they were very supportive, and they were very understanding, and it was and I just was doing it for fun, really. But I got really, really into it, really loved it, and it was really nice to connect to the outside world. You suddenly, when you become housebound, so many people know it's very isolating. You're suddenly cut off from all the normal things, and it was really nice to be interacting with people, like without illness being a factor. I could interact on the same level as everyone else, and that was really nice. And that has led on to the work that I do now, which is, again, it's really flexible, and it's like literally sometimes I do 15 minutes at a time, spaced out through the day.
So is that research, is it?
Yeah, so I'm doing research, yeah.
And is that something that you sort of just, are your employers quite flexible with you in terms of how you manage that within your week kind of thing?
Yeah, absolutely brilliant. I mean, I aim for 5 hours a week. Some weeks I I can't do that. But there are occasional weeks when I do a bit more, so it averages out. I just keep a record of what I do. And yeah, they're super flexible. The only thing, sometimes there's like a meeting at a set time, or sometimes I'm doing qualitative interviews with people, and obviously that has to be arranged in advance, and then there's a set time, but I try and avoid that too much. And recently I've been limiting meetings to 30 minutes because I know that if I go over that, there are consequences. And they've been really supportive. I think I've worked with lots of different people through different departments throughout the University of Edinburgh, and I've been really, really lucky with that. And it's just really nice to be connecting to people and doing something outside of the illness bubble, which is, really something we find ourselves in quite a bit.
And you don't need to kind of go into an office or anything. You can work from home, can you?
It's all from home. I used to use Skype before Zoom was a thing. I have made occasional day trips to Edinburgh or trips and stayed overnight. But I somehow used to be able to just push through and do a really big trip like that, and I would crash, but not really badly. And I think my crashes are worse. I don't think I can risk doing big things like that as much as I used to. So I need to be a bit careful. But so I have very occasionally met them in person, but mostly it's all done at home. So
That's good. And do you enjoy your work, or does it sort of feel a bit like a labour sometimes if you're feeling ill? Is it something you kind of, I've got to do this, or does it give you a bit of sort of time, headspace out of the ME in a sense that you kind of, or is it something that you have to kind of carry alongside the ME?
I think it's a combination. I mean, I wouldn't be using like precious energy. That's pretty much my 5 hours of cognitive energy that's available, but to me in the week, for doing something like that if it wasn't like fun and enjoyable. But like anything, there's always bits to it that are like, this is quite tedious. Although sometimes actually the tedious bits are good, because then when I'm feeling really bad cognitively, then actually just something that doesn't take much thinking, doesn't need much thinking, is actually quite a good thing. Like sorting out a list of references, or just something really boring. So it's quite good that I can normally pick and choose. Hopefully there are days when I feel a bit clearer in the head and I can actually do some good quality writing, in between other things. But I wouldn't do it if I wasn't really enjoying it and feeling like I'm making having an impact.
So let's talk about your photography, because that's kind of what we sort of what we came for. But so you sort of last autumn you sort of published a book called 25 Birds, and do you want to tell us a bit about that and how that came about?
Yes, I published a book. That was all a bit of a surprise. I hadn't really intended to publish a book. So I've never really been a particularly creative person. So I've always enjoyed doing bits of photography, and I think it was really, I saw people taking photographs and putting them on Twitter, particularly Carl Bovis. Lots of people follow him with beautiful photographs of birds. And I had the opportunity to get a new camera, and we got one that was really nice and lightweight, but still like a really good camera. And I thought, I'll just have a go at that. It looks, I just through my lounge window. So I started taking pictures and posted them online, and just getting really lovely comments back. And I thought, this is actually something I can do, because there is something really nice about doing creative stuff when you're ill. And I tried a few different things. I'd spent quite a while trying to do paper cutting, which looks so beautiful, but it just took too much energy, too much concentration. And I tried clay modelling and all sorts of things, and nothing had really quite stuck for me. But this was something that actually I found I was doing not all the time, but every now and again. Sometimes, and literally it is often through the lounge window, and I'm sitting on the sofa and I see a bird and I grab the camera and take a photo. Sometimes it's a bit more energetic, I suppose, and I'm actually sitting outside waiting for birds to come. I'm hoping that something will appear. So yes, all the photographs in the book are taken from my garden. It's just a normal like suburb of Glasgow, quite a small garden. It's not particularly in the countryside. So they're all birds that like are quite. They're mostly birds that are quite common in gardens. There's a few that are perhaps less common that I've been lucky to spot, that are just sort of passing through. And they're all taken over the course of a year. And it just came about really because I've been posting them online, and particularly on Facebook, and people have said, "Oh, you should do something with these." And I thought, "Oh, that's a great idea. I know, I'll publish a book." I had no idea how much effort it was going to be, how much. It was. I was a bit naive about the whole thing, but then I thought, well, it's an opportunity to raise money for charity and also for to raise awareness, I guess, so I can sort of tell my story, talk about my challenges of how I took these photographs, but also just bring wildlife to people's homes. And I know so many people with ME appreciate wildlife in all sorts of different forms, and it's been actually a really nice way to connect with other people, which is why I love your podcast so much, and the idea of your podcast, because I don't want to just talk about being ill. I've got been ill for so long. It's important as well, but I don't want to just do that. And I think the wildlife things has been that I can connect to people who are ill and who appreciate wildlife in all sorts of different ways. And I've learned so much from so many different people about wildlife gardening and protecting hedgehogs and all sorts of things. So that's been really nice, and I've lost my train of thought.
That's okay. I was going to ask about, because what I'll do is I'll put a link to Amazon on the show notes, and we might add some pictures in afterwards. But I was going to say, no, I've lost my train of thought as well. But that's the thing that comes naturally, isn't it, with ME?
This is what I was going to say. So the book, going back to the book. So so all profits going to Action for ME, and I was quite keen to. So it's split. So 50% goes to biomedical research, and 50% to supporting people and all the work that they do with that. And I know research is really, really important, but I was also quite keen to support people who are, particularly people who are newly diagnosed, and all the other sort of work they do around like trying to get more funding, trying to get more awareness. So it all goes to a good cause. Bringing wildlife into people's homes, that was the other thing. So I know people appreciate wildlife so much, and not everyone can get out, and not everyone can get to see wildlife. And then I really hope that in a way, people could look at the book, and there's also an audio version if anyone wants. If you purchase the book but you don't want to be reading the words, get in contact with me, and I can give you the audio version to listen to.
So, as well as the photos, what sort of things have you written about? Because I know you sort of produced it with the kind of thinking of raising awareness or the money going to ME charities, but have you talked about your illness as part of the writing within the book?
Yeah, so it's a combination of just little bits about the bird that I've taken the photograph of, but also about how I took it and the challenges that I faced. So, that I can't stand up very long and I have to sit down. That I talk about the camera that I use, and that it's really lightweight, like at least compared to many posh cameras. And so there's quite a lot about my challenges and how that has affected my photography, and obviously the fact that they're all from my garden, they're all basically from because I can't go out and take photographs from birds very often in other places, so it combines the two. It doesn't totally focus on ME, but
no. It's a bit of a combination. Do you use a tripod or a monopod to sort of help you with support, or if your camera's quite light, is that something that? I mean, if Dov was here, he'd probably get into conversation with you about the technical side of it. And my camera's quite old now, so it's not. And I've tried sort of taking photos of birds, and I've kind of bought a slightly better lens, but it's the technology is not good enough for me. I'd have to spend a lot more money to get that quality of picture. But is that something you thought about quite a lot in terms of accessibility for you to make that process easier?
Yeah, I mean, I think I haven't used a tripod with it because I just feel like that would be a lot more hassle to set up
Mm,
and harder to use when you're sitting down and able to look. And also, birds move like quite quickly,
fast,
so
yeah,
it's quite difficult. It depends where you are. I guess if you're looking at birds on that are sitting still, like ducks or something, I don't know, um,
yeah,
or you know that they're going to be coming to a certain branch, maybe that's helpful. But I don't. I just use a very fast shutter speed, um, so you do need quite a lot of light to take it. And then
yeah.
once I got into it and sort of proved to my husband, apart from anything else, that it was a real hobby for me.
Mm-hmm.
I upgraded and got a better lens, a much better
Mm,
zoom lens, and that really
mm,
helps. So you don't have
mm.
to be quite as close to things, but yeah, the it's very difficult. It is still quite a heavy camera, so I mean, I think this works. It just happened to work for me and my level of illness, and it wouldn't necessarily work for anyone else. But I don't have pain, so I'm not too bad
Mm,
with holding the camera, as long as it's not for too long at a time. Um, so it's not the lightest thing ever. It's not as as easy as holding just a lightweight digital camera, but it's not as heavy as the proper wildlife cameras that people use. And those the ones I keep looking at online that I really 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 want, but I know
mm,
I just couldn't manage it. So there is a
mm,
compromise there.
mm. And I'm thinking of getting a copy for my dad for his birthday, so I will do that. So I'll have a look. But what's your favourite bird that you've captured?
Oh, that's a good question. So my favorite moment of the year in terms of birds was when the woodpecker came.
Mm,
So a great spotted woodpecker, um, and particularly I think that it was the female was coming like really regularly throughout the day, back and forth, and it was quite clear she was getting as much pat ball as she could into a beak and then flying off every time in exactly the same direction towards the park, which is about a 10-minute scoot away. Um, and we just sat there thinking, I'm sure she's feeding chicks. I'm sure she's feeding chicks.
mm.
And then a few weeks later, actually the male arrived with a young juvenile woodpecker, and it was incredible. So it's not the
Wow.
best photo in the book by any means, but it was the most like just that's just amazing wildlife.
Mm,
Uh, but what's my favourite? I think there's a photograph of a sparrow, just a house sparrow. We see them all the time, and this is one of the things that I've really enjoyed about taking photographs is it makes you really look at things in a way that I've never done before.
mm,
And house sparrows are actually really beautiful. They've actually got really lovely markings. And this one was just sitting on a fence with a feather in its beak, clearly taking it to go and line its nest. Um, and just somehow the light was right and the angle was right, and it's just for me it makes a really beautiful image, almost sort of artistic, rather than sort of just a photograph. So yeah, there's lots of lovely birds in the book, and I've had feedback saying people saying that it's helped them to identify some of the common birds that they see in the
mm,
garden, that they wouldn't
mm.
necessarily have been able to recognise before.
It's funny because I for many years before I got ill, we lived in the Midlands and lived in a new build house, and there was just zero birds. You'd get the odd like pigeon, but it was just like there was just nothing. It was like these new build estates just feel quite dead sometimes, don't they? And I didn't have time or the energy to put into sort of much gardening. And but then we moved back up to the northeast, and we actually lived in a caravan for a year, and the caravan overlooked the orchard. And I made a list of all the different birds, and it was like having to go back to my childhood again to learn the different birds, because I was like, well, what's that? I should know that. And we had things like coal tits and bullfinches and green finches and goldfinches and greenfinch. Yeah, I think one of my favourite ones is the pied wagtail, and I see that in the garden in the mornings. But is there a bird that you would like to come to your garden but you haven't seen yet?
Yes, definitely. Lots of people get nuthatches coming to their gardens, and I have never seen one here. I've seen one in other places, but not here. I don't think that they've even been seen very in like the woods around. I haven't heard of them. And then the other one that's possible is a blackcap, which I have seen in the park, but I've never seen on the feeders here. So those are ones to add to my list. So I'm keeping a list of birds that I've seen. So it's my house list, my birds that I've seen from the house and garden. Currently stands at 39 species.
Wow.
Wow. So it's really, really exciting when something new happens. So a raven came over last week, I think it was, which I don't think I've ever seen a raven before, not knowingly, and certainly not from the house. So
no.
So that was a really nice thing. And I think it's amazing that there are still new birds appearing that you don't necessarily. And interesting, the pied wagtail, we used to get them when I first moved here. We used to get them down the street, but I haven't seen them for ages.
Yeah. Have you got and I guess you still take photos of birds. So have you got any sort of like plans to sort of have 25 more birds, or or another book, or is that sort of it for you now in terms of kind of?
There are some possible plans afoot, but more thinking about like merchandise, like mugs and calendars and pictures, postcards, and that sort of thing. It's just having the energy to get all of that sorted. But I know not everyone. Well, lots of people have bought the book, but not every. Once you bought it, you've bought it, and not everyone wants a book necessarily. So lots of people said, well, what about a tote bag? No, that's quite a popular option, I suspect. So there might be something like that coming. So keep your eyes open for that sort of thing. And again, all proceeds will go to charity.
And for you, has that process and the photography of the birds, is that something that kind of like, I can tell that it's something you're really passionate about, and is it something that kind of brings you meaning in itself, or are there other things for you in your life that kind of bring you meaning in terms of trying to live with ME and process your illness?
I mean, the photography is, I think, in so many different levels. So I'm not, as I said, I'm not particularly creative. Like I can't really draw or paint or things like that. But taking a picture, you have created something. You've captured a moment.
It's definitely creative. Definitely creative.
Yeah. And so there's the process itself of just sitting, and sometimes just sitting and nothing happens. Nothing turns up or the light's wrong or whatever. But even that is just, it's almost meditative, just sort of sitting and watching and being really in tune with nature and just what's going on around. And then there's the process, and then I love looking through the photos and trying to like edit them. I don't do a lot of editing, but I'm still learning it. I've still got a lot to learn about editing photos, but just trying to find a way to present them in the best way possible, whether that's like really zoomed in on it or whether it's zoomed right out, and capturing the more of the surroundings that the bird is in, or whatever. And then I love sharing them, and that just brings so much connection with people. And again, as I say, a connection that's not about ME, a connection that is a way of connecting with with other people with ME, but also with friends and family who don't, who aren't ill, but I can still find a way of, making that connection of talking about something that's a bit different and just bringing a smile to people. If I can, brighten someone's day just by a photo, then that makes me really happy, because it is, well, ME is just so isolating. It can be so isolating and so hard to make connections with people. And I think, as lots of people have experienced, and we've talked about, that if you put a post on Facebook about, my illness, then it doesn't necessarily get a lot of responses. But if I put a photo of a nice bird and say, oh, this is the first time I've managed to get out in 3 weeks, then people will respond to that. So I think it's
definitely, it's finding a way to not lose those connections, and the photos. I'm similar in a way, because I take my wife's a brilliant gardener, and we've just got all the flowers blooming in our garden at the minute, and I've been sort of posting pictures of sort of the garden and things, and it is a brilliant way of connecting to people. But like you say, it's sometimes people don't know how to respond when you're sort of trying to raise awareness with ME, because it's such a personal thing, but it's also, I think people think, how do I respond to that, because ME is such a difficult thing to live with, and I think people don't know how to kind of relate, because the lives that we live are so different from everybody else in the world in a lot of ways. Not to say that other people don't have the challenges, but yeah, definitely. And I really appreciate that for you. That's a mechanism to kind of like engage with people, and I love seeing your photos on Twitter, and it's just it's just brilliant, and I think it's fantastic, and I'm pleased that you've done it. And then there's the added benefit of the money raised for the charity as well. So that's really positive. So thank you for sharing your sort of story and your experiences. And as we come to an end, I've got one question. It might tie in, it might be something completely different, but it's a question that we're asking people to feedback for us this week on the podcast. But I was just thinking this week about something that helps me, just that I really enjoy in my daily life. Is there an item that helps you with your day-to-day life with your ME, that you have like a product or an item? That for me, it's my noise cancelling headphones, because I can just shut myself off from the world with them. Not that there's much noise in my environment, because it's but if my kids are watching a film and it's loud or something like that, I can go in another room and just shut off and sit in a sort of like a cocoon. Is there anything like that's particularly helps you with your ME?
I mean, the thing that comes to mind is just my blanket, I think, because I get so cold. Even when it's been a really warm day, which, okay, doesn't happen a lot in Glasgow, but it does happen in the evening, and I know it's still warm, but I get really cold, and I just the feeling of having the blanket on me, and I use it when I do meditation, and so I use it all through the year. So yeah, I think my cuddly blanket is my.
That's good. So yes, you can stick around, and what we'll do is we've got another advert from Exhaustion Enterprises.
I love your adverts.
You'll never guess what they're trying to sell us now. Here we go. It's they're actually trying to sell us fresh air. Do you suffer from ME or CFS? Do you feel like you're constantly running on empty? Do you long for the days when you could just take a deep breath of fresh air and feel refreshed? If so, then you need to try our new line of bottled fresh air. Our fresh air is sourced from the highest peaks of the Swiss Alps, where the air is pure and unpolluted. It's then bottled and shipped to your door, so you can enjoy it whenever you need it. Just one whiff of our fresh air will make you feel like a new person. You'll have more energy, you'll sleep better, and you'll feel overall better. So what are you waiting for? Order your bottle of fresh air today. So yeah, and don't forget, our fresh air is not a cure for ME, but it can help improve your symptoms. So if you're looking for a way to feel better, give our fresh air a try. We'll guarantee you'll be glad you did. Offer valid while supplies last. So
Fantastic. Get me some bottles, please.
bottles of fresh air. I cheated on this because I got Google Bard to write it for me, and it was quite funny. And there was extra bits below. They were going to throw in some free earplugs, which I've got no idea why they thought that, or why the artificial intelligence thought that that earplugs came with fresh air. But I just think so often we kind of people try and sell us stuff, or there's, you see adverts for ME, CFS for recovery programs and things like this, but they don't actually tell you what it involves without kind of like you signing up, and it just feels like there's a lot of people that are trying to make money out of the chronic illness industry, and fresh air is is bonkers. But sometimes we feel like we need it, but not in a bottle. So.
Mind you amazing what you can buy, like people who bottle water in all sorts of forms, and it's just water.
Yes. So there you go. But don't try and buy our fresh air, because you won't be able to get it. So, but yeah, thank you, Anna, for joining us this week, and hopefully Dov will be back soon. And there we go. So thank you. And
thank you very much.
Well, that was a brilliant discussion with Anna, and I really appreciated meeting her and learning about her experiences, and just I'm really looking forward to getting a copy of her book now to give to my dad, hopefully. But yeah, so I hope you enjoyed it. Just a note on Dov, he's doing all right. He's just focusing on his writing this week, and hopefully we'll speak to him, all being well, next week, and he'll be back, because I really enjoy doing it with him. So yes, we've got a brilliant poem now by Rachel Shire Satullo. I have made a separate video with some graphics and some music of sorts to go with this poem, and I'll sort of put that out separately on YouTube. But for now, I hope you really enjoy this poem. I've read it a number of times over the last week or two, and every time I sort of get something new from it, and I've really enjoyed it, and enjoyed reading it as well. So enjoy this poem, and we'll see you next time. Today I feel a world apart, by Rachel Shire Satullo. I cannot catch a falling star, but I can catch a cold, and hold it in my orbit for such time it's unforetold. I cannot take one small step without it feeling miles, and with this leap of magnitude I'm bound for strange exile, to brave new dimensions where life has been eclipsed by a waxing illness umbra in syzygy affixed, with ever-present pulsars in galaxies of pain, colliding, queasy, shifting cores of alien terrain, a volatile viscosity of air where toxins brew, so nebular in origin, its verity askew. This space I occupy is a world in parallax, perturbed by meteoric flares, invisible impacts. Without escape velocity, thoughts vacuum into dust, but I reside a space cadet, avoiding wanderlust. For now, my low kinetic energy of burned out satellite cannot defy this gravity. I've no fuel left for flight. But I am made of stardust, and this atmosphere of woe reforms exploded nova shards to fuel a cosmic glow. So I evolve a life form in this symptom constellation, a denizen who hunts for love amid the aberration. And though I dip in darkness, I can scoop up light. My brain is wider than the sky, so I can dwell here in the wonder how such falling stars hold twinkle deep within.